Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Fillon and Nick Stevens. And tonight we've got a lot to get to, including some injury news, both good and bad, that has occurred since our last show last week. We're also going to talk about some interesting trends that have unfolded over the first couple of weeks of the minor league season. Shout out our players outside the top 30 for their performances, and talk a little bit about the hot start that Hudson Haskin is having down at Double-A Bowie. But at the beginning of each show, we always like to shout out new members of our Patreon community. And we've got a couple of people to shout out this week, so I'll turn it over to Bob.
Yeah, we got 5 new Patreon members, and I think we might have a few more after we talk about something else in a second. But let's shout out these guys first. Eric Garfield. Everybody knows Eric Birdland on Twitter. Shout out to him. Appreciate the love he's showing us. Ethan, welcome aboard. Santiago it happened. Taboda. Brooks Phelan. Shout out to my cousin. And Corey Roll. Hopefully no relation to Billy Roll, former Orioles draft pick that was a bust. But no, thanks, guys. And welcome aboard. And yeah, so today we recorded an interview with the big man himself, Mike Elias. And it wasn't planned this way. The interview just happened to come out 2 weeks early, or for us to record 2 weeks early. So as a benefit to the patrons, we're going to release that to them early tonight or tomorrow morning. And if it will eventually go out to everybody as episode 100 in 2 weeks. But if you want to hear it earlier, you can always sign up for the patron, but definitely no pressure to do so.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. We'll definitely have more reflection as part of our 100th episode, which is just 2 weeks away. And we've actually got a lot in the works here and On the Verge for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And we'll get to that in a little while. We'll start off with some of the injury news, because last week was a rough stretch for the Orioles when it came to player injuries. I'll just name off some of the players that have hit the IL since our last show. Kyle Brnovich, Toby Welk, Terrin Vavra, Noel Berth Romero, and Raul Rangel. Now, mind you, not all of these injuries are created equal. Some are better than others. Some are worse than others. And even coming into tonight's show, some of these injuries were, first reported a few days ago, and we still don't know the full extent of them. But obviously, we hope these players make as quick of a rebound as possible. It sounds like in the case of Kyle Brnovich that he is going to be out for a while. I believe Toby Welk is also on the 60-day IL for Bowie, so he looks like he could be out for quite a bit. But, Nick, I'll just start with you, because it did seem like kind of a rough trend last week where we'd be going through the games, someone would get hurt. But it's also, unfortunately, I think a product when you get in the early stages of the season sometimes where these nagging injuries can pop up, which not all of these are nagging. I think some of them are going to prove to be more severe, but some of them might set players aside for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I've seen some comments already that suggest like the world is ending. But I think that was more just like you mentioned, they all seemed like back to back to back in like a 48-hour window. It seemed like all of these guys went down. But I mean, when I look at it, like if you kind of look at who's injured, though, it's like Yusniel Diaz earlier on. Obviously, I think we all could have seen that one coming. Terrin Vavra, we've mentioned this before on the show that Terrin Vavra actually does have a very long history of injuries. And it's just that one hurts the most for me because I've mentioned before that I've really enjoyed watching him play in AAA. I don't think anyone in this system battles like he does. And that's a huge compliment to this entire system. But Vavra, I think, is a step above a lot of guys. And so now hopefully he's not out for a super long time, because I really imagine him being a contributor in the major league level at some point this year. Brnovich, nothing confirmed yet by actual sources, but Norfolk broadcast did mention that like he's going to be out for a significant amount of time, so we can only speculate there, but it doesn't sound good. And Rangel's injury, I know Sam Jelinek, the broadcaster for Delmarva Shorebirds, was like, yeah, he's only throwing, I think he said like 83, 84 miles an hour, and he couldn't find the strike zone, was removed after an inning. So when you throw like 90, 92, 93 regularly, that's a big issue, I think. So that's waiting for confirmation there. But yeah, it's tough. But on the bright side, like Carter Baumler's coming back. We saw Eric's video today. He threw in a game today. I got video over the weekend of Brendan Hanifee throwing in Florida off a mound. He's getting ready to go. You're seeing a lot of guys come back from injuries as well. So that's it's balancing out. It's balancing itself out here, I think. And there's also one other name. I didn't mention this before the show either. I just forgot. Daryl Hernandez. He did leave a game the other day and he's missed the last 2 or 3 days. He hasn't returned. He walked off the field with a trainer, and I have no idea what happened because it's just like a routine fly ball. Took his batting gloves off and was like, all right, let's play the field. But he never made it back out in the field. So I don't know what's going on with Hernandez there, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think Hernandez was ever actually put on the injured list. So hopefully that's a good sign. Kind of like Kyle Stowers where, oh, he's going to miss a month. No, he missed 2 games and he's fine. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to, it's baseball. There's going to be injuries. We are a deep farm system with a lot of names we're paying attention to. So of course it's going to stand out when a few of them come up with some injuries, hopefully shorter than the worst fears could be expected. But you also have guys like Anthony Servideo, who's still working his way back. He should be back relatively soon from what I understand. And Adley is going to be in Aberdeen as soon as tomorrow to rehab and get back to the major league level. Same with DL Hall. I mean, he's not rehabbing, but he's working his way back. Rico Garcia, we got to hold our hopes out for him. I don't even remember who he is exactly, but he's on a rehab. So yeah, you got guys coming back. You're going to have guys pop up with injuries. It's baseball, but I don't think it's anything to be super concerned about early on.
Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, it's just sort of a byproduct of baseball in April. Sometimes I think the players come out of camp. And mind you, that some of the players we just talked about are not on the 40-man, so they had a longer spring training. And this can unfortunately happen. It's part of the game, and it's not a part of the game anybody enjoys. But it's unfortunately part of it. And I did want to mention at this point, Daryl Hernandez is not on the 40 or not on the IL for Delmarva. We're recording this on Monday night, a little bit after 8 o'clock. As of this point in time, he is on the active roster. And Greg Cullen is working his way back on a rehab assignment. He played for the Shorebirds a little bit last week. So there's a player that is coming back. And do want to touch on Adley Rutschman and DL Hall going to Aberdeen next week, because we know that there's going to be a lot of attention paid to these players as they come back from injury, especially Hall because he missed so much of last summer. And the question is, can he stay healthy, get to the major leagues this year as we expect? With Rutschman, I think that everything has probably been handled pretty methodically, and he's going to go to Aberdeen for a little bit, probably go to Norfolk, and maybe we see him with the Orioles sometime next month. But it's still going to be an interesting week there with those two guys wearing the Ironbirds uniform.
Yeah, I'll be at the game tomorrow night. Hopefully you get to see Adley behind the plate. I know Gene Pinto is starting, and maybe DL Hall will get his appearance, his first appearance of the year. So going to look forward to that. But just good to see these guys back out there. And what are we thinking with Adley? Do we think a week in Aberdeen? Is he going to just tour the upper minors, like a week in Aberdeen, a week in Bowie, a week in Norfolk, and then end up in Baltimore when they get home for that longer homestand coming up?
Possibly. I just put up Norfolk's schedule to look, thinking, because I know Bowie is in Richmond this week, which it's still close, but obviously you probably want your guys at home at their home ballparks. But Bowie's back home next week, and Norfolk they're in Gwinnett this week, and then they go to Nashville. That's going to be cool, playing the Nashville Sounds, a new opponent.
The Orioles home state.
Yeah, future AAA team. No, that's pretty cool because Nashville, I think they're new to the International League this year. But yeah, so they're in Nashville next week. They don't come home till the 10th, so maybe it could be Aberdeen, Bowie, then Norfolk, then the big leagues. We'll see. I think it doesn't seem like there was too much information about more specifics with Adley's injury. So I think it is going to take probably a longer ramp up than a lot of fans what they want to see, unfortunately. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're going to go about it methodically, because for as good as Adley Rutschman is going to be, and for as much of an impact that I think he's going to have right away on this team, especially because the Orioles really have not been hitting well over the first few weeks of the season, you don't want to rush him there and have him struggle because he's not 100% or close to it yet, or have something else happen again with the injury. So if they're going to be methodical about it, I'm fine with that. And the other thing to keep in mind, too, is the Orioles do have 2 long road trips in May, which is why when we did our predictions, so I think I picked the opening of the Mariners series at the end of May as when I thought Rutschman would debut. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen, but my guess is that it's going to be based on who is home over the next few weeks. And like Nick mentioned, would be Bowie next week, Norfolk the week after, and then probably have him in AAA for a couple of weeks before bringing him up to the majors. My guess right now would be, a reasonable timeline.
Which could line him up to come up at the same time as Grayson Rodriguez, if we're looking at him to come up end of May, early June, potentially. And yeah, I can't wait to see Adley frame job Julio Rodriguez for another call to strike 3 that was a ball outside.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it's that Mariners series, like I'm gonna have to find some way to get up to Baltimore. It is tough right now just to go to the store, but I'm gonna find a way to drive 3 hours up to Baltimore, because if I can see Adley Rutschman make his debut and see Julio Rodriguez up in the majors, maybe it's Grayson Rodriguez versus Logan Gilbert, or just Logan Gilbert throwing for the Mariners. Like that would be a pretty fun series to go to at Camden Yards. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get our first major league press passes for that game and all go together.
Well, there are two potentially great prospect series in May at Camden Yards. You have the Royals coming in early in the month with Bobby Witt Jr. Then you got the Mariners coming in later in the month. Now, as much fun as it would be to see the top 2 picks from the 2019 draft go at it with Rutschman and Witt, I feel like right now that the later in the month might be a more realistic time frame. But still, like, it's kind of fun to talk now about Adley Rutschman being back on the field and actually think about, when could he debut? What is his next few weeks going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it will be performance dependent. Maybe, if he comes out and looks like, he's still getting in the swing of things, he's not exactly lighting the world on fire, just needs some more time, then they'll take more time. But if he comes out and he's just like hitting 350 with 8 home runs over the first 2 weeks, then bring him right on up. I guess, time will tell, but I think it's going to be hard if he's just killing the ball to just keep him down there for 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, and with DL Hall too, like, Elias has said that if Hall's healthy and he's ready to go and he's performing well, then like Sim contribute coming in strong with that comment. But yeah, they're like DL Hall. This it's promising to see him in game action so soon. I was curious about when were we going to see him? Where do we see him in Delmarva for a little bit first, like a couple weeks in Delmarva, then Aberdeen, then Bowie, then maybe a cup of coffee in Norfolk. But if he's going to hit the ground running in Aberdeen, it's going to be a build-up for him, obviously, but could this still put him on a timeline for if everything goes well? And that's a lot that has to go right, but could Hall still be on that timeline for reaching the major leagues at some point at the end of the year for maybe a couple of relief appearances or something? But it's good that they're all going to be back on the field now.
My thought is combining what you just said with Hall starting all the way up, and not all the way up, but higher than the bottom rung in Aberdeen, with the comments that Elias made earlier in spring that, you're going to see DL Hall to major league level sooner than maybe you think. Maybe they just plan on getting him up here by June or July and using him as a reliever, at least this season. Like Michael Baumann is kind of getting that treatment right now at the major league level, or maybe he starts and it's like Tyler Wells types of starts where it's 3-4 innings max. But I don't know. It's exciting if he comes out and is commanding the ball. Again, it's going to be hard you're going to hear Orioles fans tweeting a lot about, let's get him up here.
Well, it's something else too. I don't want to give anything away with our interview with Mike Elias, but there was a comment that he made, and if my math is correct, and I'm looking at this list correct, that gives me even more belief that they want DL Hall in the majors pretty soon, and they think it could be a possibility. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I almost brought that up, but I didn't want to ruin it either.
Well, yeah, and when Mike Elias talked in the spring about, when we could see Hall in the major leagues, I kind of changed my calculus a little bit, because leading up to spring training, especially with the lockout, I was kind of taking a more conservative approach with Hall, where it's like, okay, we might see him at the end of the year, we might not. Maybe it's possible that he goes all of this year pitching AA and AAA and doesn't get to the majors. But when I saw that, the comments that Mike Elias made in camp, which Bob just touched on a second ago, I kind of felt like, okay, you're going to see Hall this year as long as he's healthy and producing. And I think that having him start now, especially at high A, might be a way to kind of manage the innings a little bit, where maybe his first outing in Aberdeen is only an inning long, but you start to build him up a little bit to where if he's in the rotation or he's in the bullpen in August, you can run him out there for at least 3 innings.
Yeah, that natural sound audio this week is going to be it's going to be taken up a level in Aberdeen. This is really good. And Tuesday night, since most people are probably listening to this Tuesday morning, hopefully Tuesday night, like they're going to be the only show in town. So since all 3 other affiliates are playing at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, I didn't realize until right before we came on the air. So yeah, this is a great opportunity for the Ironbirds. If you're close by, like get out there Tuesday night, support these guys, and get a quick look at Adley before he's in an Orioles uniform.
Should I hop on the YouTube channel and do a live stream from the park and call the game while I'm there? I don't know.
The DMs are open, Aberdeen. We said it before, and we keep saying it.
Well, 11 a.m., that probably means there's a lot of education days around minor league baseball tomorrow, and they're an experience. I'll just leave it at that. We'll move on now to the segment where we're going to kind of talk about interesting trends that have unfolded over the first couple of weeks. And for the most part, it's all positive, and we're kind of focusing on things that are happening either broadly with the teams or with players that are highly ranked in our own top 50 list. And we don't know, and we'll talk about our own picks individually, but we don't know how these are going to sustain themselves over the course of a few months, let alone a few weeks. But there's still interesting things to point out. And I want to start with Bob, who has something down here about walk rates for the top 3 levels in the minor league system.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I know it was a big thing at the major league level with the Orioles. Oh my gosh, they're top 5 in walks or what have you. Well, it's the majors, it's AAA, it's AA, it's high A. Low A not as much, but that I've talked about on our daily recaps that's just a different calculation as far as success at the minor league level goes this year for the Orioles. But AAA Norfolk, they lead the International League in on-base percentage and are right up. I think they're second in total walks. AA Bowie is second in on-base percentage in the Eastern League and right up there in total walks as well. And Aberdeen is second in on-base percentage in the South Atlantic League, which is still weird to say because that used to be Delmarva. They're only 0.001 percentage point behind Rome for the lead there, and they also have a bunch of total walks. So it's just great to see that I know, again, trying not to reference the interview we did earlier today, Elias made it seem like maybe we're just on the same ground as everybody, but to my eyes, we're at the top of these leaderboards in every level. That has to say something. And if you go to more player specifics, Gunnar Henderson has a 22.2 walk percentage, which is 4th best total in the Orioles minor league system. And one of the guys ahead of him only has 9 plate appearances, and he's only got a 19% strikeout rate. That, to me, is the most encouraging single performance when it comes to walk rate.
Yeah, that's the fantastic one. Like Gunnar Henderson, and still just 21 years old. So that's what, like 3.5 years younger than the competition, probably closer to 4 years younger than the competition at AA. I don't know how many pitchers younger than him he's faced this year. So like that's fantastic considering Gunnar Henderson. I think one of the issues you've heard with him coming up over the last year or so is the strikeout numbers. And so far, so good. And Jordan Westberg as well. That's another guy where you heard a lot of, yeah, but he strikes out a lot. And he's still striking out about a quarter of the time, 25%, but he's got almost a 20% walk rate. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of guys you see in Norfolk's lineup are, Jahmai Jones, and we could talk about him in a minute too. He's been slumping a little bit, and he's kind of he made me look bad after my praise of his for last week's episode. But guys like Tyler Nevin, Ryland Bannon, like these are guys who could be contributors to the major league level, are probably better options than what we're currently seeing at the major league level in some positions. And they're getting on base, they're doing damage. And so that's really positive to see. And like you mentioned, it's at every single level. Delmarva is the exception. Delmarva actually has some kind of absurd strikeout rates and swinging strike rates. But I think this was after our last episode. John Mioli, if you didn't catch it, had a fantastic piece about Delmarva. He was down there, wrote about Moises Chase, wrote about the learning experience that's going on in Delmarva. So that is, like Bob said, a unique area right now of prospects. But hopefully they start to turn things around. But yeah, those numbers look absolutely fantastic so far through the rest of the system.
With Henderson, I think it goes back to the end of last year. It felt like there was a lot of scouting the stat line going on outside of like the Orioles prospect world, where it's like, oh, Gunnar Henderson looks like a 3 true outcomes hitter. He was a 3 true outcomes hitter for like the last month of the season or the last 6 weeks of the season. He was not that hitter all year. And I think that what we're seeing is him getting more comfortable with the older competition. And I agree with you, both of you, that the walk rate, where it has been this year, especially in comparison to strikeout rate, which is lower than the walk rate right now by about 3 percentage points, is a big deal for him. So when you see that his plate approach is locked in, and he didn't hit his first home run this season until late last week, but he made it count because that ball still has not come down.
Yeah, 112 miles per hour, 108 miles per hour. Yeah, Gunnar Henderson last year, even in low A, had like a 30% strikeout rate. Same with high A, and then it was almost 60% in his little taste of double A. So that is a huge improvement. And, it's still only 14 games, but from what we talked about it last week, Zach, you mentioned it, that strikeout rate and walk rate are kind of the ones that kind of stabilize a little quicker than other stats. So it's a very good sign. And Kyle Stowers is similar. His strikeout rate's down to like 15-something%. It's good to see.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up next. 15.6% strikeout rate for Kyle Stowers, 13.3% walk rate. He struck out. These are his strikeout rates of the previous 3 stops last year at high A, double A, and triple A. 34%, 30%, 34%. So he's cut that by in more than half. That's that's his age. 10 game sample size. He missed a couple of games there, but still, that's a guy who, again, Orioles fans want to see in the major leagues fairly soon, and a guy who could contribute in the major leagues fairly soon. And you got a 171 WRC plus. You're not striking out. You're getting on base at a huge rate. Like, that's huge.
Yeah. And you want to, sorry, Zach, I was just going to say, you want a reason not to worry about Colton Cowser, who has a 36% strikeout rate so far and still a 12% walk rate, which is pretty solid. Just look at this. Just look at the evidence that the Orioles can get their strikeout percentages down. Not to mention, we just know that Colton Cowser is not going to strike out this much over the long haul. But, it's a blip on the radar. And the fact that Kyle Stowers can go cut his strikeout percentage in half and Henderson can almost do the same, then I'm pretty sure Cowser can get back on track.
Yeah, completely agree, Bob. And with Stowers, to me, when I have seen him this year, he looks even better than he did last year. There's something there that when you watch him at the plate, he has a better plate approach than I think he had last year. I think that time in Major League camp was good for him, and I think that whatever work he was putting into his performance leading up to the 2021 season, which was something that Matt Blood talked about when he was on our show a little more than a month ago, he's continued to stick to that, it seems like. He's having good at-bats. He's cutting back on the strikeouts, and he's hitting at a place right now where you normally don't really see power numbers in the month of April. Norfolk can be a tough hitter's park, especially early in the year, and the power is there. So we know what he can do, and it's given me a lot of hope that as long as he stays healthy, you're going to see him contributing at the major league level by sometime this summer.
Yeah, Norfolk's a tough place to hit home runs unless you're Robert Newstrom, who just hits them out of anywhere, or Bryce Harper. I mean, Johnny Reiser with a 288 ISO and 13% walk rate. Still can't get over that one. But yeah, Stowers, to me, he just looks confident. I feel like he's just more comfortable with the approach that he kind of gleaned onto with Ryan Fuller last year and company. And yeah, he just looks so like, I don't know, he just feels like a big leaguer at this point. And, it's just got another month or two, and I think he will be.
Yeah, I think one of you mentioned before we hopped on, kind of compare his numbers through that first series and then look at his numbers the last week. They look a little bit better. Yeah, I think he struck out 3 times on Sunday, but he was performing well going into that Sunday game. So it looks like he's adjusting. Maybe they are trying to get more power out of the bat. Maybe they're tinkering with some things right now. It's early in the year. We know he's a high floor prospect. We know he had the skill sets are there. The hit tool is fantastic. So maybe let's just tinker with some stuff now and see if it works. And if we need to go back to what we need to go back to, then they can. But I think just overall, and also you look at just among qualified hitters, like in the system, looking at walk rates as a whole, like Taryn Vavra, Gunnar Henderson, Robert Newstrom, and John Rhodes. Well, John Rhodes is equal, but these guys have more walks than strikeouts. John Rhodes both at 12.5% both. And John Rhodes has one of the lowest swinging strike rates in all of minor league baseball. So a lot of good news. And so now if you're hitting the ball hard, a lot of high OPSs, a lot of high number of home run totals here, like things are trending in the right direction. And no need to worry about Colton Cowser right now. And give it another month, and if he's struggling, like we said last week, we can have a bigger conversation then. But don't worry about Colton Cowser.
And just to continue to be all over the place, Kobe Mayo, he's got a 9.5% walk rate, 20 years old in high A. That's pretty good. And he's only striking out 20% of the time. So, yeah, while the raw numbers aren't exactly as electric as when he was in FCL and Delmarva last season, the underlying metrics are there that he's still the same guy.
Yeah. The whole system is. I think it was Steve Molesky that had that tweet the other day. Like, this whole system is full of guys who are playing against much older competition. You look at the combined rosters at each of these three levels, AAA, AA, and high A, they're very young compared to their peers. So I think that makes these numbers even more impressive.
Absolutely. And Nick, I'll turn it over to you now because you have some thoughts on the AAA lineup.
Yeah, just a couple of guys who we've talked about, like, can they contribute at the major league level or not? Do they have one more shot before the Orioles kind of move on from them? And that was Tyler Nevin, Rylan Bannon, and Jahmai Jones. And I wanted to see, they got off to hot starts, but we saw stretches out of them last year that were hot and extremely cold. They're 3 series into this season, and they've each played about 14, 15, 16 games. And so far, like, they're still hanging on strong, except for Jahmai Jones. But yeah, like, Jones is really on a cold streak, making a lot of talk about swing decisions. He's swinging a lot at balls way out of the zone, which are head shaking. But you look at Rylan Bannon, he's got a 441 on base percentage and a 154 WRC plus. He's been playing a really good third base. Tyler Nevin's hitting 382. He's got a 444 on base percentage. He's not striking out, like a minimal strikeout rate, more line drives. His WRC plus is like 177. And remember, 100 is league average for anyone who may not be as familiar with that stat. These are just 14, 15, 16 games, but I don't see any sign of these guys slowing down tremendously like they hit these walls last year. And Nevin as well. Kudos to Nevin, because I thought he's kind of like this black hole at third base. Like, you had a ball over there, he's not getting to it. He made a lot of just, I don't want to say bonehead, that's not the right word, but just like, what are you doing out there? Plays defensively. And this year, it's like, what are you doing? Like, what changed? It's a different what are you doing this year with Tyler Nevin? I've been very impressed. I know Fangraphs is rough on him, saying like he's going to be like a KBO star or a Japanese baseball star this time next year, but he's performing extremely well in Norfolk. And Chris Owens has like 2 hits all year. Odor's OPS is like 300, 400 something. Like, I think you got to give these guys a shot this year and let's see what you got.
Yeah. First of all, I compared Tyler Nevin to a poor man's Mark Trumbo defensively last year, and apologies, Tyler, for that. But yeah, you're making me look bad there and making Tim DeJohn look good. I think we need to do a 3-for-2 special, get rid of Odor, Owings, and Gutierrez once the rosters go from 28 to 26 and bring up either one or both of Tyler Nevin, Rylan Bannon, and maybe a guy who's going really under the radar, but he looked great in spring, and he's off to a great start this year. Richie Martin, of all guys, 27 years old now. He's got an 11% walk rate, striking out under 22% of the time. He's got an OPS near 900, 220 ISO. I mean, he's looks like a different guy. I mean, maybe it's a mirage. It's still short sample size, but I'd still rather see Richie Martin at this point than Chris Owings, Rougned Odor, or Kelvin Gutierrez out there.
Yeah, Rougned Odor, Chris Owings, or Kelvin Gutierrez are not going to be around when the Orioles are competing again. And you need to try to get the younger players who you think can be part of the solution in some way playing time this year. And I really wish that, one of the drawbacks, like Tim DeJohn was a great guest when he came on, but one of the things that we couldn't do because we were in the middle of the lockout was talk about players who were on the 40-man roster, which is a shame because I really wanted to know what kind of work was going in with Tyler Nevin at third base. And my sense, and I think that if this is correct, the Orioles are going the right way, is to really challenge him at third base, because we know he's not going to find an opening at first base or either of the corner outfield spots. So if he could play even a serviceable third base and do what he's done throughout his minor league career, which is really not strike out, walk at a high rate, give you good line drive power that at Camden Yards maybe gives him a little bit more home run power, that's enough to at least be a viable solution for the rest of this year and to kind of be a bridge to, Jordan Westberg or Gunnar Henderson or Kobe Mayo or whoever, or, stick around for a while as a guy that you can put at any of the corners. And Bannon looks to me like the Rylan Bannon of 2019. I made that point on Locked On Orioles recently, and he kind of looks like he's back to the Rylan Bannon that we saw before last year. The question mark for him is, we know he can get on base. He can hit for a good average. Doesn't have a ton of power, though, and has been generally okay on defense, but not great. But I think if he plays a serviceable third base and can give you some starts at second, the Orioles should look at promoting him sooner rather than later. And Bob, I agree with you too about Martin. I would like to see him get an opportunity, especially if some of the players at the major league level now continue to struggle.
Yeah, and go ahead, Nick.
I don't know if Bannon and Nevin are like future like full-time options there, but Zach said the word bridge. I think they are much better bridges than Odor, Owens, and Gutierrez. And yeah, with Richie Martin, like I'm not getting fooled again. I can't yet. Prove me wrong, Richie, but I think I said this in a daily. Like he's been playing fantastically for Norfolk. I will give him that credit. I was on the Richie Martin bandwagon for a while last year. I thought put him in AAA, let him do this, and then bring him back up to the major leagues. But this could be a real late bloomer option. But I don't know if I can fall for that again. I'm not doing it yet.
Yeah, just talking about Bannon, the thing with him, and that's so funny what you just said about Richie Martin. He's walking more than he did last year, 16.2%, but he's actually striking out like 6% more. His ISO is 50 points down from last year. The difference is instead of a 176 batting average for balls in play, he's at 444. So he's having great luck compared to last year when he had awful luck. So let's just say somewhere in the middle. And he's got a 154 WRC plus. So let's just call him 10% better than average. And that's 10% plus another 10 or 20% better than the guys currently on the Orioles or than average.
On to my trend now, what I'm going to highlight is one player's performance, and that's Cesar Prieto. What did we hear about Prieto coming into this year? Good feel for the strike zone, good contact hitter, can hit the ball all over the place, but doesn't hit for power. Ceiling's probably that of like a Nick Madrigal. Comps with someone like Eric Sogard. Two good infielders that don't hit for a lot of power. What we've seen so far, though, is that through 15 games and 63 plate appearances, Prieto has 16 homers, 13 RBIs, a slugging percentage of .679, an OPS of 1.060. Now, Aberdeen was just in Greensboro, and we did not have MILB TV down there. So other than one video that he posted to his Instagram that was taken from a center field camera angle, we don't know how far those balls went. And I can tell you from having covered the South Atlantic League for a lot of years, Greensboro is a bit of a bandbox. But the home runs that we have on tape at Aberdeen, which is a pitcher's park, Prieto got all of them. He crushed those balls. Those were not wall scrapers. And I'm curious to see what you guys think about this, because home runs, like anything else, can come in batches and prove to be completely unsustainable. DJ Stewart in 2020 is probably the poster child for that. Or maybe Prieto has found something here where he's not necessarily a 20, 25 home run hitter down the line, but maybe that low to mid double-digit home run total is possible for him, which is good for a second baseman, especially one that, solid defender, doesn't strike out, going to hit for a high average.
Yeah, I think, that is a good point about, home runs can kind of come and go, and you don't want to sit here and say, like, Prieto is going to be a 25 home run hitting second baseman at the major league level, but he's adjusting extremely well. Like, that's what my takeaway from this is that he has hit the ground running literally driving the ball out of these fields. And that's impressive. Like, yeah, I know all the reports after the Orioles signed him were like, this could be a guy who could be in the major leagues, maybe at the end of this year, possibly for sure next year, if everything goes right. Quick riser, should start in the upper minors, but still, like, it's still a big adjustment going from, I know it's professional baseball in Cuba, but now you're over here in the United States, and you can say like maybe professional baseball in Cuba is like equivalent to high A. I don't like all those comparisons. Like the KBO is low A, Japanese baseball league is double A. Like, I don't like all those comps. Like, this is different. It's a lifestyle adjustment, cultural adjustment, and getting used to a new type of pitcher, what he's doing. And right now he's hitting the ground running, performing extremely well. I like that for him. If the power sticks, that's fantastic. I don't think anybody had him leading the Orioles minor league hitters at any point in home runs. Him and Johnny Reiser nipping on his heels there. But yeah, that's fantastic. And the walks at the beginning of the year, those were non-existent. And now this past week, he's got more walks and strikeouts. So he's obviously seeing the ball well. He's driving the ball well. Defense, I haven't really paid too much attention to. They've had him kind of all over the place. So we'll see about that. But I think in the very, very near future, the Orioles aren't going to let him just sit around and twiddle his thumbs in high A. So I think you got to wait for something to happen at the major league level first, and then you're going to see a massive ripple effect. And hopefully that's in the next couple of weeks, because normally every time somebody goes on like a 2-game hot streak, everybody's like, promote him now. He needs to move up. This guy needs to move up a level. And it's so annoying. I can't stand it. I can't get on board with that. Call me slow with all of this stuff, but I don't buy it. But with Prito, I'm following the chance, and I'm joining in there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. I was just writing about this before we came on for my Down on the Farm article that's going to post tomorrow, that it's the walks for me that just show how quickly he's adjusting to the high A level, which, as you say, he's probably too talented for coming into it, but it's the adjustment to just professional American baseball life, the grind, and getting used to just the everyday environment of it all. He went from the first 9 games of the season, 0 walks, 7 strikeouts, to last week, 5 walks, 3 strikeouts. He's got his walk percentage up to 8% around average that quickly, and he's only striking out about 16% of the time. He's batting .321, and his batting average for balls in play is only .293. So it's not like he's been lucky in any way on that front. And the power, yeah, we knew he had bulked up a bit. We heard on Locked On Orioles how he had put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle and worked at that while after he defected, waiting to sign with the team. So it's not fluky to me. Yeah, power can come and go for sure, but the hit tool is always there for Prieto. He might, be below average walk percentage type of guy, but he's going to hit, and I think he's ready to move up. As soon as Rylan Bannon, Tyler Nevin, whoever moves up to Baltimore, I think we'll see Jordan Westberg move up to AAA, Cesar Prieto move up to AA, and Daryl Hernandez turn up to high A, and it'll just be the floodgates open from there.
I think that what Prieto is doing at Aberdeen is not insignificant when you consider that he defected last May. So he had a fairly long layoff before he was signed by the Orioles. Now, we know he was putting a lot of work in because we've heard about him getting stronger. So it's not like he wasn't doing anything in that time period, but you're still looking from May to January was when I believe Prieto signed. Fairly long layoff. And then you get into spring training, and then you start playing in competitive game action again in April, almost a full year after you defect. So for him to hit the ground running the way he has, I think is a great sign.
The Orioles had him in Sarasota in those camps like the day after he signed. So they were very clearly like, we're going to get you in. We're going to get you ready for this experience. So clearly the Orioles are pretty high on him. And it's way too early to kind of say, like, what could he become at the major league level? Is this a future major league piece at the end of the year or early next year? I don't know yet. Enjoy the ride for right now, but this could be a massive, massive get for this franchise. If it was $500,000-$600,000 they signed him for, right place, right time for the Orioles, but this could really tilt heavily in their favor, because if those reports were true and he could have been in a normal cycle, a $2 million signing, that's a fantastic deal for the Orioles.
Yeah, I think another thing I just thought of that might be a little underrated, especially with the Delmarva guys all coming up from Florida and DSL the last couple of years, is it's cold. It is cold in April. When's the last time Cesar Prieto played baseball in the cold for 2 weeks straight, and all these guys. So as this weather heats up, I expect him to just get even more and more comfortable.
Absolutely. And we'll move on now to what was an interesting story in the Baltimore Sun that ran over the weekend. Andy Kotska, got to give him a lot of credit for writing this great article about Hudson Haskin, who is off to a phenomenal start at Bowie. As of Monday, 11 games, 44 plate appearances. He's batting 385 with an OPS of 1.201, 4 homers, 12 RBIs. For comparison, last year in 363 plate appearances between Aberdeen and Delmarva, Haskin hit 5 home runs. So he's one away from tying his season total last year. And what was interesting about this article was that it really dug into the whole profile that has been out there about Haskin since he was drafted by the Orioles in 2020, which is the unconventional swing. And Haskin gives some excellent insight into kind of how that swing came to be, that there was a lot of tinkering that went on, and it took him a while to get comfortable with his swing again. And that he and the Orioles put a lot of work in that started to pay off a little bit last year and has paid off in an even bigger way to start this year. So if you have not read that piece yet, I would encourage you to go over to the Baltimore Sun and check that out. But we're going to talk about it a little bit because Haskin, we didn't get much of a chance to talk about in our last show, is off to a great start. Nick, I'll start with you. After reading this piece and seeing what Haskin has done over the first couple weeks of the minor league season, do you feel like there's a lot more to him than what may have initially met the eye when he was drafted out of Tulane?
No doubt. Like, I know last year was kind of a little uninspiring statistically. I don't think he was the guy we mentioned a whole lot on the podcast. And, you know, the injury that ended his season prematurely kind of aided that. But you look at this start, he only played in, I don't know how many, I can't do the math off the top of my head there. Let me see here. He only played 26 games, we'll say that, at Aberdeen. 83 games total between Delmarva and Aberdeen last year, 26 in Aberdeen before the injury happened. And they already, this is just his second season of pro ball. Not even, he didn't get barely half a season last year. And they're starting him out in Double-A. So I think the Orioles are clearly high on him and are willing to be aggressive with Hudson Haskin. And if he can continue this, he's not going to continue, you know, a 432 on base percentage and hitting almost 400 throughout the year. But if he can stay hot and continue this trend, like, you know, we could be putting Hudson Haskin in that same conversation. When we talk about Kyle Stowers, Colton Cowser, like the top outfield prospects, I think Hudson Haskin can move into that category. I've mentioned before on one of our preseason shows that, like, you know, Haskin, I think it was one of the surveys, Brandon Stoneberg, Patreon member, shout out to you and your surveys you were putting out. And we went over one of those surveys, and the topics was, you know, Hudson Haskin or these outfield prospects who really emerges this year. Hudson Haskin wasn't my pick, but I said, don't sleep on Hudson Haskin. Second round pick out of Tulane, small school. The Orioles clearly saw a lot they like. And I love that story because it showed, like, this guy's got a major chip on his shoulder. And I think he's out to prove a lot of those scouts that called his swing ugly and unorthodox and everything wrong. And I absolutely love that type of guy.
Yeah, for sure. And do you think the Orioles know their players? Look at the guys that were surprised started a level higher than we expected them to. Johnny Reiser starting in AAA while Zach Watson starts back in AA. Haskin going up to AA right away. Adam Hall starting in AA. And it's all, you see why already 2-3 weeks into the season, why that's the case. And yeah, Haskin, I know I saw him probably play the best game of his life when I went to Bowie and he hit 3 home runs. But I mean, that wasn't like he was swinging all out and it was the best he could give the ball. It was easy power, opposite field. A couple of them just kept carrying. I mean, the power is real. And if he's figured out a way to tap into that in the games, which is what we were calling for coming into the season, then he could end the season knocking on the door of the majors this year.
Just keep feeding him that Olive Garden cheesecake. That was a funny story. That was hilarious.
Yeah, because Haskin, you kind of saw flashes of the other tools last year, like solid defender, runs the base as well, good plate approach, but not a lot of power. There was nothing really particularly inspiring in the offense last year that made you think this guy is, you know, in that realm of Kyle Stowers, Colton Cowser, and, you know, sort of even expectations Heston Kjerstad of outfield prospect. But he's kind of making a case to be in there now because not only is he a good hitter, but he's a legitimate center fielder. He can play the position. Yeah, he's not one of those guys that you're looking at as, well, he'll move off the center field. He'll move over to a corner as soon as he gets to the big leagues. He's a pretty good center fielder.
Yeah, he's not going to be electric out there. He's not going to be probably a Gold Glove center fielder, but he can definitely play center field and at the major league level. I think, he might not have Ryan McKenna's glove, but he's going to not strike out 80% of the time, I think, when he gets to the majors.
Yeah, I can't look this up fast enough, but I'm curious to see like what is that how are they splitting up those reps, like Zach Watson and Hudson Haskin in center field? Who's getting more run out there in center field? I imagine it's Haskin, but it's the sample size is so small with that injury, it's probably tough to tell at this point, but maybe something to look at going forward.
Yeah, so far I'm pulling this up off of Baseball Reference. Haskin has 7 games in center field for Bowie. Watson has 6 and Adam Hall has 3. So fairly even split when you factor in that it's 3 players over a small sample size.
Yeah, still good start, fantastic start. I think again, just keep adding these guys, get these pop-up guys, because I hate to say this right now because it is so early, but Zach Watson is really struggling, and hopefully he can turn that around because he was such a fantastic story last season. But right now he's struggling. But yet we're seeing Hudson Haskin step up at the AA level. So keep adding to that depth, and because you can never have enough of these guys in the system. Because even if Kowser does emerge, and you got Stowers up there, that he emerges, you keep Cedric Mullins, you got Austin Hayes up there, and Haskin becomes a very valuable trade piece. I feel like I'm mentioning that more and more with these guys, but it's hopefully that time comes soon. So that's another positive here.
Progression is not linear, so a lot of guys will flame out. A lot of guys will look like, oh no, they're not going to reach their potential, and then next thing you know, they're bursting on the scene as well. And I think we've seen that a little bit with Haskin this year.
We'll move on now to our final segment of the show where we shout out players outside of our top 30. And because I think it's fitting with the discussion we've had about Bowie outfielders, I'll start with Bob here.
Yeah, I wanted to, speaking of Adam Hall, give him a shout out. We've been tough on him last year. He had a rough season. He had an 89 WRC plus in high A Aberdeen when we thought he was going to start at AA Bowie last year, but he's really, whoops, dropped my phone. He's really showing the faith that Matt Blood had in him coming into the season with a 130 WRC plus off the back of a 340 batting average and 812 OPS. He's always going to steal bases. He's got 5 already. And he's utilizing his skills in a much better way. The walk and strikeout numbers are similar to last year. I just think it's a matter of knowing who he is, being comfortable with the player he is, and doing the best that he can to translate that best on the field.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Adam Hall. So far, you're proving all of us wrong, and I'm here for it. It's pretty awesome to see him perform so well in AA, because that was a guy, too, I feel like they probably could have started in high A if they really wanted to, but they went ahead and pushed him up to AA, so kudos.
Yeah, driving the ball, I think the best he ever has, looks really good in the outfield. Definitely an encouraging start.
Yeah, and I also wanted to just shout out for my pitcher this week, a reliever for AAA Norfolk, who we saw dominate in the Arizona Fall League, Nick Vespi. Thank you, Rule 5, for being canceled. This guy's yet to give up a run at the AAA level this season, and his FIP and XFIP are pretty much just as good, 1.23 FIP and 2.13 XFIP. Got 11 strikeouts over those 7 innings, only 1 walk, and that first walk came in his last appearance. So, yeah, I know the Orioles bullpen has been good at the major league level this year, and it's not like, I don't know, when the rosters shrink, you're going to be able to get rid of the easy scraps like Lakins and an injured Chris Ellis right now. But Nick Vespi's banging on the door. So if Paul Fry trade is available, I think you gotta do it and replace him with the better version.
Yeah. He's ready. That's all there's to it. Nick Vespi's ready to go. See what you got.
Couldn't agree more. And sticking with Norfolk, I'll turn it over to Nick now.
Yeah, so my hitter, I'll go hitter first. I'm going to shout out Brett Cumberland, another guy that I think we were kind of down on a little bit after last year's performance. Being a hit-first catcher who didn't really hit a whole lot last year is kind of tough, but he's done a fantastic job. He's hitting .438 right now with 3 home runs in Norfolk. I think he had all 3 home runs last week. Nottingham is still around and on that Norfolk roster as well, so I think it's going to be difficult for Cumberland to kind of crack through, but good job for him to continue to stick around and fight through, get some playing time there. And then for my pitchers, I went with two guys here, Kelvin LaRoche and Ignacio Feliz. And LaRoche is a guy who, I said before we hopped on, that I haven't really paid attention to his stuff yet. I'm sure Eric is watching, and I know Eric knows who LaRoche is very well. So chime in there if you're still watching live, Eric, and give us a scouting report there. But he is a guy who I now want to watch a lot more closely over this next week. 9 innings so far this season. He's yet to give up a run, just 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. A 22-year-old international signing out of the Dominican Republic who his numbers in the FCL last year weren't that great, but we know that's not always the best idea to just box score or stat scout line in the FCL and those rookie ball levels. But so far, so good. He's the guy who's really sticking out. And Ignacio Feliz, I mean, I just want him to succeed so bad. Former shortstop, minor league phase, Rule 5 draft pick, really struggled in high A last year after his breakout in Delmarva. But he came in after Gene Pinto, who Pinto threw 4 innings, struck out 8. Fantastic job. Ignacio Feliz one-upped him, which is hard to one-up Gene Pinto. Feliz went 4 innings, struck out 10, allowed just 1 run. So, yeah, I'm intrigued again because I don't know how many guys can strike out 10 in 4 innings. There's Eric. Haven't seen a ton down here, but remember short counts. We like short counts when it comes to pitchers. So, yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. So I'll stick with the pitchers to start off here. Cole Avila. That's someone we've talked about a lot, a minor league Rule 5 pick out of last year's draft. Through 7 games at Norfolk, he's got 2 saves, 8 strikeouts, and has not allowed an earned run. He's off to a really impressive start, and this is someone who Fangraphs has noted in the past for having a good changeup, having a good feel for his pitches. So got to AAA last year in the Rangers farm system and struggled. But I think this year is going to, hopefully turn a corner and could be right in there with Nick Vespi in that conversation of relievers who could help Baltimore's bullpen out before too long. And the other one, Dylan Harris, had a week to remember for Bowie. 5 games, he batted 500, 10 hits and 20 at-bats, 2 home runs, 20 total bases, 4 doubles, 2 very good plays on defense. And we have to remember the slide around home plate that allowed Bowie to win in extra innings on Adam Hall's walk-off sacrifice fly. So Harris doing a little bit of everything last week, and for me, that was just way too tough to ignore for this segment. So he's my pick this week.
Great choices. I mean, I was shocked to see Dylan Harris because he's one of these undrafted free agents after the 2020 draft, but he's just one that didn't exactly make an impact last year like the Bowens, the Mundys, the Brandon Youngs of the world. He had great on-base skills, but didn't hit for average or power. They move him all the way up to AA right away to make his season debut, and he just comes out on fire with 4 doubles, 2 homers. He's been amazing, and I don't know if it's just a great little run here for him and he's going to come back to earth, but still cool to see no matter what. So hopefully he could be this year's Patrick Dorian, a guy who just, comes out of nowhere to be like, whoa, this guy had this in him.
Yeah, and I just remember when we were pointing with Dylan Harris, I do remember the first time we had Matt Blood on, he name dropped Dylan Harris. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he did name drop him in that show. So I thought he was just kind of a speed defense guy. He didn't really hit well last year, a ton of strikeouts. And this could be just an initial blip. The opposing pitchers probably didn't have a scouting report on this guy. But yeah, I don't think you could ask for a much better debut. Offense, defense, base running. He really did it all. So incredible job by Dylan Harris this last week for Bowie.
Also, shout out to Cole Avila. I don't think he's given up a hit yet this year.
That's a good point. I mean, he has been lights out in Norfolk. So, yeah, no hits allowed so far in 7 innings of work. So far off to an excellent start for the Tides. We will be back next week when we will be joined by Bowie Bay Sox left-hander Drew Rahm. Drew's currently scheduled to be our guest for our 99th. So, as we mentioned at the top of this episode, Mike Elias will be the guest for our 100th episode, and we'll have a lot of other things in store for that. That's 2 weeks from tonight, so be sure to check that out. In the meantime, check out Baltimore Sports and Life for all the latest articles on the Orioles, NFL, college sports, and more. Be sure to hop on the message board there and join a discussion with fellow readers of the site, along with some of our contributors. Bob has a couple of new pieces up on the site today. Nick and I will be working on some content as well here over the next couple of weeks. And also continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. We'll have all the latest updates for you there throughout the week in the Orioles minor league system. Thank you for listening to tonight's episode. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spud, and you've been listening to On the Verge.